humanity is standing at the most important crossroads we've ever faced. For the very first time in all of history, we're seriously planning to become a species that lives on more than one planet. Just think about that for a second. It's absolutely incredible. Elon Musk and SpaceX have put forward these ambitious plans to build a city on Mars, and it's captured the imagination of people all around the world. But here's the thing that often gets lost in all the excitement. Mars is an extremely dangerous place. It's not just some empty land waiting for us to move in. The red planet has some serious challenges that could make living there much harder than most people realize. We're talking about problems so big and so complex that they could completely change how we think about space colonization. From the air you breathe, to the ground you walk on, to the very thoughts in your head, everything about living on Mars would be completely different from life on Earth. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. We'll look at the real science behind Mars colonization, not just the exciting parts, but the tough realities too. Because if we're really going to do this, if we're really going to send people to live on another planet, we need to go in with our eyes wide open. This isn't about being negative, it's about being smart. It's about understanding all the facts before we make such a huge leap for humanity. Because the decisions we make today about Mars could affect our species for centuries to come. So let's take a deep dive into what it would really take to live on Mars, starting with something you can't even see, but could be the biggest danger of all. Let's talk about the invisible danger that could make Mars the most dangerous workplace in the solar system: cosmic radiation. Picture this. Every second you spend on Mars, your body would be bombarded by high-energy particles traveling at nearly the speed of light. These aren't like the occasional X-rays you get at the dentist. This is a constant, unavoidable assault that would affect every colonist from the moment they arrived. On Earth, we take our planet's defenses for granted. Our thick atmosphere acts like a protective blanket, absorbing and scattering harmful radiation before it reaches the surface. Even more importantly, Earth's magnetic field creates an invisible force field that deflects most charged particles from space. Mars lost both of these protections billions of years ago when its core cooled and its atmosphere was stripped away. What remains is a planetary sitting duck, completely vulnerable to everything space can throw at it. The numbers are startling. A colonist on Mars would receive about 300 millisieverts of radiation per year. That's 50 times more than what you'd get on Earth in the same period. To put that in perspective, nuclear plant workers are limited to 20 millisieverts per year for safety. A single solar storm could deliver a lethal dose in hours if astronauts were caught outside during an eruption. Even inside habitats, the protection would be limited. These particles can penetrate metal, concrete, even human tissue, damaging cells at the molecular level. The health effects would be cumulative and devastating. Every cell in your body contains DNA, the instruction manual for life. Cosmic radiation shreds this manual like a shotgun blast through paper. Over time, this damage leads to mutations that can cause cancer in nearly every organ system. Brain cells would be particularly vulnerable. Studies show space radiation may cause memory loss, reduced cognitive function, and even early-onset dementia. Vision would deteriorate as radiation clouds the lenses of the eyes. The cardiovascular system would weaken as radiation damages heart tissue and blood vessels. For women colonists, the risks are even more alarming. Radiation can destroy eggs in the ovaries, meaning female astronauts might arrive on Mars fertile, but become sterile within years. Any pregnancy would be extremely high risk, with radiation increasing chances of miscarriage, birth defects, and developmental disorders. These aren't abstract concerns, they're biological realities we can't engineer our way around with current technology. The solutions we have now are woefully inadequate. Underground habitats provide some protection. About 3 meters of Martian soil could reduce radiation to tolerable levels. But living permanently underground defeats the purpose of colonizing a planet. Lead shielding is too heavy to transport. Water walls show promise, but require massive amounts of a precious resource. Even advanced materials like hydrogen-rich plastics only block certain types of radiation while letting others through. Perhaps most concerning is what we don't know. NASA's radiation models are based on limited data. We've never had humans experience Mars-level radiation for extended periods. The first colonists would essentially be test subjects in the largest uncontrolled radiation experiment in history, and unlike medical trials, there would be no way to withdraw consent if the effects became too severe. This isn't science fiction, it's established medical physics. Any serious Mars colonization plan must address this fundamental challenge first, because without solving the radiation problem, everything else, the habitats, the food production, the social structures, becomes irrelevant. The Red Planet doesn't just challenge our engineering skills, it challenges our very biology in ways we're only beginning to understand. Now let's talk about something that might surprise you. Mars isn't just a barren desert, it's actually a toxic wasteland. That rusty red color covering the planet? It's not just harmless dirt, it's filled with chemicals that could slowly poison any colonist trying to make a life there. The biggest problem is something called perchlorates. These are salt-like compounds we use on Earth for things like rocket fuel and fireworks because they're highly explosive. On Mars, they're everywhere, mixed into the soil at concentrations about 1,000 times higher than would be considered safe for humans. Just breathing in tiny amounts of this dust could cause serious thyroid damage, leading to weight loss, fatigue, and even coma in extreme cases. And it gets worse. Perchlorates are water-soluble, meaning they would dissolve into any water colonists tried to extract from the soil, poisoning their drinking supplies unless carefully filtered out. But the toxicity doesn't stop there. Martian soil also contains high levels of heavy metals like chromium and arsenic, the same substances we go to great lengths to avoid in our food and water on Earth. These accumulate in the body over time, damaging organs and increasing cancer risks. The dust is so fine it would get everywhere, clogging machinery, working its way into living quarters, and coating spacesuits. Apollo astronauts reported that moon dust smelled like gunpowder and caused allergy-like symptoms. Mars dust would be far more dangerous. This creates a nightmare scenario for growing food. Any attempt at farming would require completely removing or neutralizing these toxins first. Imagine having to wash and treat every single handful of soil before you could plant seeds in it. And even then, Martian dirt lacks the nitrogen compounds and organic matter that plants need to grow. Early experiments suggest crops grown in treated Martian soil would be stunted and weak, producing maybe 10 to 20% of what the same plants yield on Earth. That's not nearly enough to sustain a colony. The dust storms make everything more dangerous. Mars experiences planet-wide storms that can last for months, coating everything in fine toxic powder. Unlike Earth sandstorms, Martian storms never really end. The dust just gradually settles over weeks or months. This means equipment, solar panels, and spacesuits would constantly be contaminated. Cleaning procedures would have to be meticulous. Any oversight could mean slowly poisoning the entire colony. Even with advanced filtration systems, the risk of accidental exposure would always be present. A torn glove, a malfunctioning airlock, a minor habitat leak, any of these could introduce toxic dust into living spaces. Over time, even tiny exposures would add up, potentially causing chronic health problems for long-term residents. Unlike Earth, where toxins eventually break down or get washed away, on Mars they would persist indefinitely, accumulating in the environment. The psychological impact can't be ignored either. Living in constant awareness that the very ground beneath your feet is poisonous would create tremendous stress. Every outdoor excursion would require decontamination procedures. Children born on Mars might never experience the simple joy of playing in dirt or growing a garden without complex safety measures. This fundamentally changes what it means to be human in ways we're only beginning to understand. Current solutions are partial at best. Some researchers suggest using bacteria to break down the perchlorates, but this would take years to implement across large areas. Others propose covering the worst toxins with cleaner soil, But where would that soil come from? The reality is, we'd be fighting Mars' natural environment every step of the way, in a battle we might not ultimately win. Now we come to perhaps the most overlooked danger of Mars colonization, not what the planet will do to our bodies, but what it will do to our minds. Imagine being trapped with the same 20 people in a space smaller than a subway car for years. No new faces, no changing your mind, no quick escape if things go wrong. This isn't just difficult, it's a recipe for psychological disaster. Let's break down why Mars would be the ultimate mental endurance test. First, the isolation. On the International Space Station, astronauts can see Earth out their window, a glowing blue reminder of home just minutes away by radio. On Mars, Earth would be a tiny dot in the sky. Communications would take 20 minutes each way. No real-time conversations. No emergency advice from ground control. You'd be more isolated than any humans in history, literally millions of miles from help. Then there's the confinement. Early Mars habitats will be tiny. Think multiple people sharing a space smaller than a studio apartment. No private rooms, no chance to go for a walk outside without hours of suit preparation. Every argument, every personality clash, every annoying habit amplified by constant proximity. NASA studies show that after just 6 months in space, even highly trained astronauts report mood swings, sleep problems, and conflicts. Now imagine decades of this. The monotony would be crushing. Same food, same views, same routines. Mars has no weather changes, no seasons as we know them. Just endless red desert. Without the mental stimulation of Earth's varied environments, depression and apathy could become epidemic. Perhaps most terrifying, the no-way-out factor. On Earth, if a situation becomes unbearable, you can leave. On Mars, there are no emergency evacuations. If someone has a mental breakdown, if violence erupts, if the group fractures, there's no backup plan. You're stuck, permanently. We've seen previews of this in polar research stations, where winter crews are completely cut off. Psychiatrists report increased rates of depression, insomnia, and even psychotic episodes. And those researchers know rescue is possible if absolutely necessary. On Mars, there is no safety net. The children born there would face even stranger challenges, raised entirely in artificial environments, never experiencing rain, or oceans or forests. Their very concept of normal would be radically different from any human before them. We have no idea how this would shape their psychology. Current astronaut screening can't predict how people will handle this. We're talking about exposing ordinary colonists, not just elite astronauts, to conditions more stressful than any prison experiment. Without major advances in psychological support and habitat design, Mars could become less a new frontier and more the most expensive, most isolated mental institution in history. Now let's tackle the elephant in the room that could make or break the entire Mars colonization dream: the staggering, almost unimaginable cost. We're not talking about expensive like building a new city or even putting humans on the moon. We're talking about financial commitments so huge they could reshape entire economies back here on Earth. Right now, sending just 1 kilogram of supplies to Mars costs around $2 million. Do the math. A single colonist, with all their necessary life support equipment and supplies, could easily run $500 million. And that's just to get them there alive, not housed, not fed long-term, not medically cared for over years. When you start calculating what it would take to establish a self-sustaining colony of even a few thousand people, the numbers quickly spiral into the trillions. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. That kind of money doesn't just appear magically. Governments would need to divert funding from other critical programs: healthcare, education, climate change mitigation. Private companies would demand returns on their investments, which could turn colonists into indentured workers paying off their transportation debts for generations. The bitter truth? The first Martians likely wouldn't be a cross-section of humanity. They'd be either the ultra-wealthy or those willing to sign away their freedoms for a ticket. But the initial transportation cost is just the beginning. For decades, possibly centuries, a Mars colony would remain completely dependent on Earth for survival. Every broken water recycler, every failed oxygen generator, every medical emergency would require emergency shipments across hundreds of millions of miles. The International Space Station, which orbits just 250 miles up, costs about $3 to $4 billion annually to maintain. Scale that up to an entire planetary colony, and you're looking at budget numbers that could bankrupt nations. Meanwhile, back on Earth, that same money could completely revolutionize life for billions. The annual budget needed to maintain a small Mars colony could instead provide clean drinking water for every person on Earth, or fund renewable energy projects to combat climate change, or eradicate several deadly diseases. This forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. Is planting a flag on Mars worth ignoring suffering on our home planet? Perhaps most disturbing is the lack of an exit strategy. If funding dries up or political priorities shift, we can't simply evacuate Mars. Those colonists would be trapped, watching helplessly as supply ships stop coming. They'd be left to slowly starve or suffocate, with the whole world watching through their final transmissions. It's a moral quandary we've never faced before. What responsibility does Earth have to a failing colony 140 million miles away? The financial realities may prove even more daunting than the technological challenges. Because while we might eventually solve the radiation and soil problems through science, there's no physics breakthrough coming that will make interplanetary economics any less brutal. Mars doesn't care about our stock markets or budget debates. It will always be an incredibly expensive place to reach, and an even more expensive place to survive. After examining all these challenges, the deadly radiation, the toxic soil, the psychological toll, and the staggering costs, it's clear that Mars colonization isn't just another ambitious project. It's quite possibly the greatest challenge humanity has ever considered undertaking. But here's what's fascinating. These obstacles don't necessarily mean we shouldn't go to Mars. They mean we need to go in with our eyes wide open. The dream of becoming a multi-planet species is powerful. It pushes our technology forward, unites us in common purpose, and might one day ensure our survival. But dreams built on ignoring reality often turn into nightmares. The truth is, Mars doesn't care about our timelines or our hubris. It will expose every flaw in our planning, every shortcut we take, every assumption we make. That's not a reason to abandon the vision. It's a reason to approach it with humility and patience. Maybe the answer isn't rushing to put boots on Mars within a decade, but taking the time to develop proper solutions, test them thoroughly in lunar habitats, and build the necessary technologies to do this right. What do you think? Should we charge ahead despite the risks, or take a more cautious approach? Could the resources be better spent solving Earth's problems first? There are no easy answers, only difficult choices ahead. Did this deep dive into Mars challenges change how you see space colonization? If so, hit like. It helps others discover these important discussions. And make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because in our next video, we'll explore the other side of this cosmic coin, the compelling reasons why Mars colonization might still be humanity's greatest adventure. Understanding these challenges isn't about saying no to Mars. It's about being prepared when we finally say go.